And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, Tom Vasel here, and today we're taking a look at a game called Chivalry. Now there's a lot of game about knights, there's a lot of games about knights fighting or building a castle or whatever. This one actually is about chivalry, embodying the attributes of chivalry. Do you have honor? Do you have humility? Do you have loyalty? And that's what the theming of the game is. Now the actual playing of the game is manipulating dice and using cards to get things to the right spot so that you can accomplish these goals. So the theme necessarily doesn't match the mechanisms per se, but I do think that the theme is an interesting one. Let's check out this game. You're going to take some tiles and shuffle them and place them around the castle, and each game will have different tiles placed in them. You'll use some greens, some blues, and some reds. Each player is going to have a knight placed on the castle in the middle and a knight placed over here. Each player is also going to get their own player board where they will take dice and put the dice on here so that the total is 15. So you could put 5, 5, 5, or in this case you can see I put 6, 4, 5. Players are also going to have 2 gold cards of their color, and they're going to draw an initial hand here of cards. These cards can be made up of wisdom, charm, and strength. On a player's turn, they have 3 options. One of the options is to rest. They'll simply draw 2 cards off the top of the deck, add them to their hand. You can have a maximum of 7 cards on your turn. Another thing you can do is you can move your knight. To do so, you're going to play a card from your hand. Let's say I want to play charm. I'd put charm here on the pile of charm cards. The blue die is 4, so I'm going to move my piece 4 spaces. When you're moving from the castle, you move out one of these 4 and then just move clockwise. So 1, 2, 3, 4. If you land on a spot that has not yet been turned over, you'll draw a card for doing so. And then either if you flip it or not, you get to do the action on that card. Each of these actions will usually require me to do something with my dice and cards. So for example here, twice I can discard a card from my hand to add 2 pips to one of my dice, or I can subtract 2 pips from a die on the table to take a card. So maybe I do that. I'll subtract 2 from this blue die to draw a card, and then I could do it again, but I don't want to right now. So that would be my actions. If you decide not to take the action, you can draw a card instead. If you land on a spot where somebody else is already, or multiple people, each of them will draw a card. So each of these spots will do various things. They will usually involve you adding or subtracting or changing the dice. Like for example, the armory here, I can change one of my dice to any number that I want to. This one here, I can add or subtract 1 from each of my dice with this slum. The monastery here, this one I can subtract 3 dice on 1 or 2 of my things to do a promote action. Speaking of promote, that's the third thing that you can do on your turn. If you meet the requirements for one of the cards here, instead of doing something else, you can promote. So for example here, I need to discard a card where there's a 5 die showing. So I would need to have a card. So let's say I had a card in wisdom and I had a card here in strength. To complete this card, I need to discard a card where there's a 5 and a 6. Simple. Boom, boom. And I also need to discard a card from my hand. If I do all that, I'll take this card. Now this card can be sacrifice or valor, my choice, and I'm going to stick it under my board. So let's say I take it as valor, and then I'll replace the card. These cards can do different things. Like this one, for example, needs 2 cards under 2 of the dice. It doesn't matter which one. This one simply needs 2 cards under 6. This one you're going to have a total. You need to discard cards where the total is going to be 12 or greater from the different dice. Now, some things like this middle spot, if you go back to the castle, let's say I'm here and I use a 2 and I go back to the castle, I can subtract 4 from my dice to get a gold card. Each person starts with a gold card. When you play a gold card, you play it here on your board and you can move 1 to 6 spaces. Also, a gold card can be discarded as a wild card for, if I need 2 6s here, I could discard 1 from the 6 and a gold card. Sometimes you can't use the gold card as this, and sometimes you need to get rid of a gold card like this one here shows you. Once you discard a gold card, it goes next to your board and you'll need to go take an action to get that gold card back in your hand again. That's pretty much it. You're going to keep going until all the cards in this deck are gone, or until one player has a certain number of cards, and that depends on the number of players, let's say 8, around their board. Whoever has the most different types of cards here, so compassion, spirituality, etc., will win the game. If there's a tie, then whoever has more cards will win the game. I should also mention, whenever you promote and you get one of these, you'll move your knight up on this track here, which just gives you special abilities. Like here it gives you the gold card. Here you can add 3 to your dice. Here you draw 2 cards. Here you can change 1 die to a 6, and so on and so forth. All right, we'll start with the negatives. The box is humongous and is a really bad insert. I think these things are supposed to slide in here. This box is huge for what's in the game. I also, you know, the artwork is fine, but there is a lot of symbology on these cards, and after a while you figure it out, but you're going to be constantly looking in the rule book to see what does each of the buildings do? What do the different icons mean? And then the chivalry cards, what exactly do you need to do to get that? Fortunately, they're all numbered, so if I want to know what spirituality does, I look at the 3 and go here to card 3, discard 2 ability cards from 1 dice with 6 points. The English translation is mostly good. There's a few times where I didn't understand something. I had to really read the rules back and forth to figure out what was going on. But once you figure out the game, it definitely makes sense. And then each player has their own color player board. And I kind of like the artwork here. You each have your coat of arms and things. The dice are good quality, although one of the dice that we got, it was one of the red dice, had some of the pips were not completely colored in, but that must be just a fluke because the rest of the dice were fine. They're really good quality dice. Then you got these wooden pieces, these cards. Yeah, the components for the game are pretty good. So Chivalry is a game that, again, it's one of the things that I thought was interesting about Chivalry was it felt very unique. It didn't feel like this was some new game that I mean, some game that I've seen before. This moving around the outside, playing a card at the die that lets you move a certain spot, then discarding that card to accomplish a goal. That combination, I don't think I believe I've seen in a game. And it leads to some kind of thinky moments. You sit there and go, okay, I want to play this card here, so that I can move to this spot, which will then let me manipulate this, which will let me get to that goal. Now, there is player interaction in a couple ways. So it might take the gold card you want it. And there's even one of the building tiles that you can play, one of the ones that goes around the castle, lets you kind of reserve one of those cards. If that's in the game, there's definitely interaction because I'll reserve one and you're like, that's the one I was going for. Too bad. Now I'm the only one who can do that. There's also a few spots that can make you re-roll other people's dice. And that can be a bit frustrating, although I suppose if you really don't like that, you could just not play with those particular tiles. The whole theming, like I said, I'm a big fan of that. I think Chivalry is a nice idea. There's a lot of cool, you know, these are attributes to try to aspire to getting. But at the same time, you're just manipulating dice. I think the cool factor of the game, though, is you get to move and then change your dice and make it go up, and then you need to make them go down, and then you need to make them do this, and then you're trying to make the die get to a certain number, but also you want to land on a specific tile, and you want to get those gold cards out there if possible. But is it worth it to take an extra turn to get a gold card, or should you just start building up the cards under each die, and then you could accomplish several goals in a row maybe? The game is not very long. It says 30 to 75 minutes on it. Maybe if you play a full game of 5 players, it would take that long, but I would say this is a 45-minute game for the most part. And that feels about right for what it is. The box, like I said, the whole thing's a little bigger than it should be. The game feels a little smaller than this big box would have you believe. But I'm always on the lookout for something different and refreshing, and I think Chivalry fits that bill. Dice Tower Judgment approved!